I want you to think about your bedroom for a second. You know, that private, locked door sanctuary where you sleep alone or maybe with just one other person. It feels totally normal, right? Well, for pretty much all of human history, that idea would have seemed bizarre, incredibly lonely, and honestly, a little bit dangerous. Okay, let's dive into the surprising history of how we sleep. So we have to start with the most basic question of all. Is our modern habit of sleeping all by ourselves actually normal? Well, if you look at history and you look around the globe, the answer is a big, loud no. What we think of as a fundamental need, the private bedroom, is an invention that's barely a couple hundred years old. And get this, even today, something like 70% of the world's cultures still practice some form of communal sleeping. This isn't just some ancient curiosity, it's how most people on the planet live right now. Turns out, we're the weird ones. So, what was it actually like back when everyone slept together? Well, for thousands of years, families would all pile into a single bed. Kings would share a mattress with their political allies, and strangers at an inn, they'd just spoon under one blanket without even thinking twice about it. It was just what you did. This quote from historian Lucy Worsley just nails how casual the whole thing was. You wouldn't just share with family, but with your coworkers and, yeah, even with complete and total strangers. The whole concept of personal space as we know it just didn't exist. Now, a huge reason for this comes down to simple economics. Back in medieval and early modern times, a proper bed with a mattress and frame was a serious luxury item. I mean, it was often the single most valuable thing a family owned, worth more than their tools, sometimes more than their livestock. Beds were so important they were specifically listed out in people's wills. And if you want to know just how valuable, check this out. In 1539, just to move the Scottish king's bed 20 miles cost the equivalent of over $100,000 in today's money. When a bed is that much of a status symbol, you definitely don't buy one for every single person in the house.
But it was so much more than just money. Sharing a bed was a really powerful social custom. For kings like Richard the Lionheart and Philip of France, sleeping in the same bed was basically political theater. It was a public sign of a deep alliance. It also meant security. In a world with no police, you were safer piled together from burglars, and apparently from hobgoblins. And you know that term bedfellow? It just meant a close, intimate friend, nothing more.
And this wasn't just for people in the Middle Ages. We're talking about future presidents here. When a young, broke Abraham Lincoln moved to Springfield, Illinois, a shopkeeper named Joshua Speed offered to share his bed with him. And they slept in that same double bed for almost 4 years. Nobody thought it was weird at all. Even America's founding fathers did it. You have this hilarious story from 1776, where John Adams and Benjamin Franklin had to share a bed at a super-crowded inn. Adams, being worried about the cold night air, slammed the window shut. Franklin immediately launched into this long, scientific lecture on why fresh air was good for you. And Adams wrote that he was so amused by Franklin's bickering that he just fell asleep. But maybe the most extreme version of this was at public inns. You were just expected to pig together. That was the actual slang term for cramming into beds with whoever else was there. It wasn't uncommon to have 3, 4, even 6 people in a single bed, with new people crawling in all through the night. It sounds like total chaos, because it absolutely was. So if this was the way humans slept for thousands and thousands of years, what on earth happened? How did we go from pigging with strangers to needing our own private locked rooms? Well, this huge shift is what we can call the Great Separation. It really wasn't just one thing. It was like a perfect storm of 6 different forces that all hit in the 19th century. First, the Industrial Revolution made cast iron beds and mattresses cheap enough for everybody. Second, the new middle class wanted to show off their status, and having private bedrooms was a great way to do that. Third, you get germ theory, and suddenly people are terrified of catching diseases like tuberculosis from the person next to them. Fourth, Victorian morality starts to see sharing a bed with a stranger as sinful and improper. Fifth, the actual word homosexual is invented, which suddenly made 2 men sharing a bed suspicious in a way it never had been before. And finally, modern hotels with private rooms and keys killed off the old communal inns for good. So that combination of factors totally reshaped the Western world. But while we were all busy building walls around our beds, most of the rest of the world, well, they just kept on sleeping together. And when you put it side by side like this, the difference is just stark. In the West, we see sleeping alone as the goal. Our bedroom is our sanctuary. But in so many other cultures, sleeping together provides this deep sense of security.
In Japan, they call it anshikan, and the idea of sleeping all by yourself is actually seen as kind of sad and lonely. A really beautiful example of this is the Japanese custom of sleeping in the shape of the character for river, or kawa-no-ji. You have the two parents as the long outer lines of the riverbank, and the child is sleeping safely in the stream between them. It's a practice that's all about creating a feeling of security and contentment. All of this kind of makes you wonder, right? In our big rush for privacy and hygiene, did we accidentally lose something important along the way? Well, modern sleep science is actually starting to suggest that, yeah, we might have. When you look at the science, it's pretty eye-opening. Studies on couples who sleep together show they get about 10% more REM sleep. Their deep sleep is less broken up. And that physical contact can actually lower levels of cortisol, which is our main stress hormone. It's almost like our brains are hardwired to sleep better when someone else is there. And yet, even with these benefits, the trend is going in the complete opposite direction. A recent survey found that a third of adults in the US have tried a sleep divorce, sleeping in separate rooms. It's especially common with millennials, where 43% have tried it. And while some say they sleep longer, a lot of them end up back in the same bed, just because they miss each other. So when you put all of it together, the history, the global cultures, the modern science, you can't help but arrive at this one startling conclusion. It's not sleeping together that's weird. It's our modern Western habit of sleeping alone that's the real historical anomaly.
This line from Moby Dick just perfectly captures that old world thinking. The narrator, Ishmael, has to share a bed with Queequeg, a harpooner from a distant land, and he basically concludes that it's better to sleep with a stranger you can trust than someone familiar you can't. The choice was never if you would share, but with whom.
And really, that's the bottom line here. The private bedroom is not some timeless, universal human need. It's a pretty recent and pretty Western invention. It was born from this very specific cocktail of industrial progress, class anxiety, new ideas about science, and new ideas about morality. For most of history and for most of the world today, humans sleep in groups. Which leaves us with one last kind of provocative thought for tonight. We think of our private bedroom as this personal sanctuary, this safe haven from the world. But what if it's actually a giant 200-year-old social experiment? And we're the ones being tested on,